I got a phone call a little while ago asking me if I would come over and I'd say something inspirational and pump the troops up and send them out ready to get after it, right? And so I'm thinking, what am I going to say? How do you be inspirational? What have I got to say to be inspirational? And basically I came up with nothing. And while as funny as that might be, it's kind of true. So I'm like, well, that's not going to work. I better come up with something. So I thought about a story that happened to me that inspired me. And while you might think it's something grand and involves a 100-foot wave or surviving something of real significance, unfortunately it wasn't. It's a story about the worst day I've ever had on the water. And bear with me, hopefully it goes somewhere. So the Molokai race had been going for about 3 years, and the relay portion had become pretty competitive, and I was doing it with my cousin Akolu. And for 3 years in a row we had won the relay, and we won it by a fairly significant margin. And after the third year, it's, for lack of a better description, started to lose a little bit of challenge to it. So we both decided that we would do it solo. All right, and that's kind of when I consulted with Jamie and Mitchell about what I was getting myself into. And so Akolu's a very confident person, and so I wanted to do well, to put it mildly. So I went into this regime of training that would leave no doubt who the best paddler was, or at least in my mind that's what I was hoping to achieve. And so I basically built myself up to about literally five hours paddling straight up into the wind, and then it'd take me about an hour and a half to get back down. So if anybody's familiar with the Maliko, I was doing from Maliko to the next point past Piahi, which is about 17, maybe 18 miles into the wind to just train, be ready to attack, and do this thing, so there was no doubt who the man was going to be. All right. So about a week out from the race, feeling really good, done all my training, I'm feeling like I can do this, and I got sick. And I think it was from overtraining, and Jamie will probably scold me for this because he's very aware of these kinds of things and he's very up on the training. But basically I overtrained myself, got the flu, was down for about 5 days on the couch, and it kind of broke my heart, you know? And so I started feeling better a couple days before the race, and I thought, well, maybe let me get on the line and see what happens, right? And so I get to Molokai, and I'm thinking, well, just do the best you can at this point, salvage whatever you can, maybe it'll come to you. And I get to the start line, I'm actually feeling all right. I'm thinking, wow, you know what? I woke up this morning, I got a little bit of energy, had some food, thinking maybe there's a chance. And I head off the line, we start. You're trying to stay calm. It's a kind of controlled, chaotic frenzy coming off the line. Everybody wants to get out there, but everybody knows it's a 32-mile race, and you don't want to win the first 100 yards. You want to win the last 32nd mile, right? And so I'm off the line. I'm handling okay. I'm staying with the leaders. I'm a little bit back of the lead pack, but I'm in the mix, and that's good enough for me at this point. And about half hour into it, Akolu makes his move, and I sort of anticipated that, and I know that moment of truth would be coming. And I tried to respond, and it wasn't there. I could tell the energy that I needed wasn't there. And I started to get disappointed, and I started to get bummed, and I'm like, well, okay, hold on, don't jump off that cliff yet. Maybe it'll come. You know how the Molokai is. You have these peaks and valleys through the whole entire race. Maybe I'm just starting in a valley and the peak's about to come. So I try and hang on, and I try and keep them within striking distance, which means 300 to 400 yards approximately. And even that's kind of a lot, but in my mind, that's still realistic that I could possibly make that kind of ground up. And so anyway, at about the 1 hour mark, it's like now or never. I've got to find out if there's any gas in the tank, if this is gonna happen or not. And basically not. And so all that training, all that preparation, all that desire, reputation, all these things that are ego driven, basically just got crushed. And so, you know, I'm hanging my head and I'm thinking, damn it, it's not my day. I trained too hard for this. I'm getting disappointed. I'm getting pissed off. I'm starting to get kind of whiny. I'm like, you know what? I'm pulling the plug. I'm not putting myself through this. There's no way I'm going to do this to myself. And so I start to paddle over to my boat and think, this is it. I'm in the boat. I'm done. Trained too hard to deal with this kind of nonsense, right? And so just before I get to the boat, and I need to back up and get a little side story going here. I'm approaching the boat and I think about this fundraiser that I had just attended about a month prior to for cystic fibrosis. And in the preparation to be part of this fundraiser, I spent the day with a girl named Emily Hagar that has cystic fibrosis, and I spent the whole day with her and I went through what she has to go through in order to just make it through the day. The drug treatments, the pounding on the chest to break up the mucus that builds up in the lungs. And it's a hard way to live. And almost every CF patient that you talk to will say one of their biggest dreams they have is to just live one day normally, without all the drugs, without all the pounding and getting the mucus out of their lungs and all these things like this. And as I'm approaching the boat, that comes back to me. And I realize these kids that have CF, they don't get to quit. They don't have a lifeboat. And it dawns on me, I'm being a whiny little bitch. Time to put your big boy pants on. And if it takes you 4 days to get to Oahu, you get there. You don't quit under any circumstances. These kids, and I'm sure everybody here has been involved in some kind of fundraiser to help diseased kids, underprivileged, whatever the case might be. Any situation where they don't volunteer, like I signed up for this race, I volunteered to be there. Kids like that, they don't have the choice in the matter. They don't volunteer. It is put upon them and they don't get to quit. They're stuck with whatever that infliction may be, and CF in this particular case. And so before I let myself get on that boat, you might do a lot of things today. You might whine, you might cry, whatever it is. One thing you're not going to do is quit. And so I didn't. I carried on. I had that idea that literally I might be out here all day. I don't care if they shut the race down and I get in at 10 at night. I'm not going to quit. So with that motivation, I started to feel a little bit better about myself, that I was doing something. And I did cry from disappointment. I did throw up from my sickness. I got pissed. I got angry. Probably cried again. I went through every single emotion that you could possibly associate with disappointment or frustration or anger or whatever it was. But ultimately, I did finish. And like I said, it was literally the worst day I've ever had on the water. And I've had a lot of days on the water. So I learned something though. They don't have that lifeboat. They operate without that safety. They can't paddle over to a boat and get out. So from now on, I don't go over to that boat and I don't get out and I don't quit. And while that may or may not be inspiring to you, a lot of the times when I'm training for this, well, I'm going to do the Molokai again this year. And so when I'm training, whether it's starting at the first paddle I did this year on up to, you know, I anticipate doing another 5-hour upwinder as part of my training. Every time I start to think, do I need to do this? God, I'm getting tired. I want to go home. This is uncomfortable, you know. No safety boat. No quitting under any circumstances. There is no quitting. And so while this may or may not inspire the guys up in the front, I hope at the very least, people in the mid-pack or maybe in the back who might be having these conversations with themselves, and I promise you, every racer, best one in the world to the worst, goes through these conversations, these mental internal conversations, and you can come up with so many reasons to quit. And some of them seem incredibly good and justify every reason in the world to get back in that boat. But the bottom line is, no matter how many times you have that conversation, it has to end up in the same place. You don't get in the boat. You don't quit. You keep going. If you got to slow down, if you got to walk, if you got to crawl, no matter what it is, you get there. Okay? And so that's what I did on this particular day. And like I said, it sucked. It really did. Kolu's in there holding up the trophy, and he's got all the lays on. And, well, that was all my self-pity and ego-driven type stuff. But I tell you what, it was one of the best motivators I've ever had in my life. Because the following year, story went in it ended a little better. So, anyway, that's my story. I was hoping it would take a little longer, but